Take 392. Welcome to my presentation on my best friend, labeled How on Earth Did We End Up Here by yours truly, Dylan Johnson. So, who am I talking about? Quick overview on how this presentation is going to go down. I'm going to go a quick introduction to who we're talking about. We're going to go over our relationship and how we work with one another. We're going to go into the different cultures that bring us together, and then how listening is the vital point to our relationship as a whole. So, who am I talking about? I'm talking about the one and the only T. Wesley Williamson. He has been my best friend for what feels like ever. I think we met back in elementary school. I think the number we came up was about 14 years. He's been one of my best friends on and off since, and I could not ask for a better friend to be by my side but him. How do you describe our relationship? It's really hard to describe our relationship in very simplistic words because it's very complex and ever changing. But I tried my best, based off both his and my reactions to one another as a whole. So, Wes is very outgoing. He's very extroverted, and because he's so outgoing and extroverted, he's very worldly in his knowledge. He likes to talk to people, so these kind of things come naturally to him. Me, on the other hand, I feel like I'm a little more reserved. I'm a little bit more introverted. But that being said, I feel like I'm a little more book smart than he is. So, in using this, whenever we talk about something really large, he really has a good concept of like the large scale of things, versus I kind of have like the nitty gritty stats like involved in things. So I tend to ground our conversations in that to hopefully find a path to what he's actually talking about. But when I say this guy can literally talk forever, he talked, he can constantly talk about Genghis Khan for 45 minutes straight without really taking a breath, and I wish that was a joke. What really brought us together, these two very opposite people, were culture. From a very young age, back in middle school and up to high school, we were both in choir. Or I was in choir, he was in band. But our love of music, regardless, let us have these really fun conversations about how music moves people and what the music on our sheets are actually doing and how they affect people. Really fun conversations like that. But those paled in the conversations we had about history. We were both huge history nerds, and we always loved the philosophy that can come from history. And we've had a lot of disagreements like that, but it's always a fun time to sit down and talk to somebody about what's happened in the past, why it happened, and kind of like the nitty gritty, like who, what, where, and why. And those are always some of my favorite conversations I've had with him. Like I said, you talk about 45 minutes stress about Genghis Khan. But both of those paired to really the holy grail of our relationship were video games. We are both really huge video game buffs, and we both love talking about them. So we play like a lot of single player and multiplayer games together. And when I say that there have been conversations that have been had in some of these lobbies that I never thought I would have, would be an understatement. They have caused so many issues, you have grown so many friendships that it surprises me to this day. But like I said, with those different cultures comes to really the key point in how we can even thrive at this point is listening. As I said, we are both very opinionative people, and we have acknowledged the fact that if we don't stop and truly listen to what the other person is saying, nothing ever gets done. Which leads into the fact that we're both very logical thinkers. So we both saw fairly early on, after colliding on so many things, that we needed to devise a way to really figure out what the other person is saying sometimes. And so that kind of led us to believe that we had to stop and force ourselves to listen to the other person, regardless of what really was happening in our minds and everything. And so we did. So, and that has shown time to time again, when we really stopped and fully let a person speak, we can more elaborately get or understand what they were trying to say. And through this, we have devised a way to really speak to one another without talking. In form of like facial expressions is a huge one for us. Because we've sat down for so long and allowed each other to fully elaborate on how we felt about certain things, we now usually have a fairly good understanding about how outside stimuli really affect one another. So this is very evident in like group settings, right? I'm very not a group person. He's a very group person. He's very extroverted. But he knows like I don't got to make very much notion saying we got to go because I'm over this for him to understand. Just like usually like a simple nod or something like that really catches his attention. He knows based on that we need to do something about it. With that being said, you can't have two people who are that opinionative together for so long without having some form of conflict. There's been lots of it, truly, but it's healthy and unhealthy. We're constantly getting better at trying to nitpick issues as they arise and talking about the issue topics like as they come up, and devising like new boundaries and new procedures for future engagements as they arise. So hopefully we can mitigate how catastrophic these conversations can really get. And eventually our conversations lead to one or two routes. Either we talk about something and it gets solved, or we don't talk about something and we just use it as a point of humor between us. Because we both understand that it's an issue, but it's just easier for us to make fun of the topic itself versus get mad at one another. That being said, sometimes this doesn't really work out in our favor. There are plenty of times where we've been talking to one another and things have just gone awry. It's just been counterproductive, which is just natural for things, in my opinion. But all these different issues that arise are what lead us to better understand one another and better move forward in our friendship. And that's where our communication really thrives, where things may not always look pretty on the outside, but everything we talk about leads to a better understanding down the road. That's how our friendship has lasted this long. We both are working on listening to one another, whether we actively do it or passively do it. We're both sitting there finding new ways to understand each other, and I think that is so crucial to how we work. Everything is always ever evolving, ever changing. Most of all, our communication. Thank you for the presentation. Have a wonderful day, Anthony.